Hello, I just wanted to give you some information about full color process printing and spot color printing. We've talked a little bit about like CMYK and resolution, and all of that comes into play with this, but you need to know the difference between the two of them, particularly if you are designing logos, which is obviously where we're headed, then you need a particular kind of color printing, not either of them. So the first one is four color process printing, and you are familiar with this in that we utilize those four colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, to reproduce any color in the spectrum. So it can be called four color process printing, it can be full color printing. I've called it process printing before. There's several different things, but they all basically mean the same thing. There's a big printing press. There's four rollers on it. This is that offset lithography that we talked about, or commercial printing. There's four big rollers. Each has an ink, and as the paper sort of goes around the roller, it picks up that particular color of ink. And generally in that order: cyan, then magenta, then yellow, then black. And here you go. This is kind of what it looks like. We're going to say that this balloon right here is our finished photograph. So if we break it down into the components of cyan, magenta, yellow, black, this is kind of what it looks like. And you can see the sky is blue and has some magenta in it. So on the blue plate or cyan plate, it's going to have a lot of that color there. Whereas on the yellow, you hardly see any right here in the sky because there's just not a lot of yellow in this particular sky, or black, for instance. So as the paper is moving along on the printing press, it starts with the cyan ink, then it goes to the next roller, which is magenta, and you can see this is sort of a combination of magenta and cyan ink right here. And then it will go to the yellow ink, so now we're adding yellow. In theory, cyan, magenta, and yellow are your primary colors, kind of like when we talk about the color wheel, it's red, yellow, and blue. In printing, the primaries are cyan, magenta, and yellow. And they should be able to mix every other color. And if you look at this, it's not too bad. But the shadow areas, the dark areas, aren't great. That's why we add in that black. So then we run it through the black ink, and you can see now the shadow areas are a lot nicer. The detail you pick up is a lot better. And it's a necessary thing to have all four colors added together. You've seen these two, dots per inch and pixels per inch. So I want to kind of explain the difference now, because one has to refers to printing, and one refers to when we're working in Photoshop or on screen. So in Photoshop, you've seen PPI, pixels per inch, and that literally is the square pixels in Photoshop per inch, for your resolution in whatever image you're working with. DPI, although we use it interchangeably, is slightly different. It's dots versus squares for pixels. And you can see here, when I print an image, the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black dots, you can see right here, they sort of print separately from each other like this is. So when you're looking far away, they look like, it's one big color or one big color photo. But when you zoom in really close, they're actually little dots. So if you zoom in on something that's been printed with the four color process printing, you'll actually see these, a cereal box or anything like that, some kind of packaging. So dots per inch refers to the actual dots that are being printed through the printing process. Like I said, DPI, PPI, we use them interchangeably because it's still looking for that number of 300 per inch. It's just one is on screen and one is after it's actually printed. Okay, then we also have spot color. Spot color is different than four color process. Spot color, so four color process is cyan, magenta, yellow, black, build to create any color imaginable, right? So if my sky is blue, I'm gonna have some cyan, probably gonna have some yellow to combine together to create that blue sky. Spot color refers to this method of printing where each ink is its own color. So if it's a blue sky, It's literally going to be a can of blue ink, and it's only going to go on the roller one time on the printing press versus all four. So spot color can be one color, it can be two colors, it can be three colors, although that gets a little bit expensive. If you go any more than three colors, it's just not cost effective. It's easier, it's better just to print the cyan, magenta, yellow, black because that's cheap. So spot color. We utilize a system called Pantone Matching System. This is an international system. They completely have the monopoly on color. You've seen this around the classroom. The ceiling tiles are Pantone chips. I talk about Pantone. It is our life as a designer. It is the only color to choose unless you are printing cyan, magenta, yellow, black. But if I'm creating a logo for somebody, a brand, then I'm going to choose spot colors. For instance, Chattahoochee. The yellow and the gold are specific colors that we've chosen so that we can keep some consistency. There's thousands of colors, there's metallics, there's regular colors, there's pastels. We have these books, and I would show you the book if we were in school. We have them in the classroom, but I can't. So I took pictures of them. So you have these color books that kind of look like those swatches that you might find in a paint store, like in Lowe's or something, where you can sort of pick the color. So it identifies color by a number, a numerical code. And you'll see this particular one is 808. This one is 809. Pantone gives the number, but that number is consistent. If I get something printed in Georgia, for instance, the Hooch logo, then it'll be the same as if I went over to Australia or over to Russia and printed it. It's going to be exactly the same because I choose those specific colors and they would use those same inks. Pantone is international. And so the reason they started doing this years and years and years and years ago is because if I went to my printer and said, our colors are blue and gold, you might get something very different depending on that printer's interpretation of or a different designer's interpretation of. You might get something like this. It's definitely blue and gold, which is very different than our blue and gold. So we pick colors. For instance, our blue color is Pantone 286. And you don't have to know that, not yet anyway. And our gold is Pantone 123. But that ensures consistency no matter where it's being printed, no matter if it's a t-shirt vendor, if we're printing uniforms or we're printing programs for football, we're always going to get that same color. So Pantone has swatches, and that's what they call them, just like if you went to Lowe's and you picked out paint, it's a swatch, or you'll recognize that name in Illustrator, InDesign, the swatches palette, right, where you hold your color. Same idea, a little bit of color. Pantone swatches are usually abbreviated, so PMS, 1 or 282, because if we wrote down Pantone matching system every time, it would get way too long. So we can call it Pantone 282, we could call it PMS 282. In addition to a number, a numerical code, there's usually a C or a U after it. And that just refers to the particular paper that it's put on. So C would be a coded paper, like magazines are coded paper, where our postcards are often coded. Whereas U would be like our regular, normal paper that we use at school, right, for handouts or copy paper. It's an uncoded piece of paper. And color looks different, which is why they have different books. Pantone has different Pantone books, color books, for those, because the same color might look slightly different on a coded sheet of paper versus an uncoded sheet of paper. Be careful on what you choose, making sure that you choose the appropriate spot color or full color process. If you're doing logos, for instance, like I said, if we are creating those logos in Illustrator, it is necessary to choose Pantone color. It's very important. Every business, every company Every university, every school has Pantone colors chosen so that there is a consistency of their brand. That is a very important goal of branding. So Chattahoochee has colors, Milton has their red, UGA has a particular red. And that way, no matter where they get things printed or who's utilizing their brand, it's always going to be consistent. So you've got to be very careful of that. Beyond choosing which way to print, you also need to choose your color wisely because of the different sort of emotions that it can evoke on for your audience. So we have to be really careful of that as well. You have to make sure as a designer that you're choosing color based on the needs, that message for your audience. Interpretation of color is very different too. Always, again, based on your audience. Age is going to be different. Remember, with little kids, we're probably picking really bright colors, bold colors. With your group, it's going to be a little bit different from my group. It's going to be different from my mom's group. My mom's group is going to be probably more pastels, grays, things like that. More colors that they like that are associated with them. So you need to be careful of that. You also need to be really careful of trends. Trends are fantastic, and it's important to look at trends, whether it's design trends or color trends, every year. But you also want to be careful about how you design with them. If you're designing a logo or designing something that is only going to be around for a year, then you can absolutely pick trendy colors. But if you want to, if you're creating a brand or a poster or something that's going to be around for a long time, particularly a brand, then you want to make sure that you're using colors, classic colors, colors that can last 50 some years. Or, for instance, like it says, a bank is a very conservative, a lawyer's office, a very conservative color. If you don't want to use, bright, trendy, vibrant colors, you want to make sure that you're picking the classic, something that's going to keep it safe. And then you also want to keep your color palette to 2 or 3 colors. And I would say 3 if you really need it, but 2 is your most cost effective, besides 1, of course. But 2 colors is fine. Sometimes you need that second color to sort of offset. If you have, for instance, UGA has that red, a really great bold red. If I paired it with something else that was really bright, or I just left red alone and just only used 1 color for Georgia, it's kind of a bright, bold color. So we offset that with black, with a neutral color, to help sort of tone it down and help for consistency. So 2 colors is really great. 3 colors is going to increase your cost, but is sometimes important and necessary to have a 3rd color introduced to your logo. If you go too much more than that, cost of production goes up, and it's better just to print 4-color process anyway. Also, you want to be careful of too much chaos in a design. And of course, this is really geared more on logo design. If you're creating a poster or something, if you have a photograph in it, that's different. That you're definitely going to have more colors for that. But the rest of the poster you might want to keep to 2 or 3 colors.